During last season, before the NHL trade deadline, the New York Rangers were a very active team, as it was definitely quite clear that they wanted to go out there and really try and shake up this roster and kind of change the direction of this team. And they definitely did that with the moves that they made, not only before last deadline, but of course already into this offseason as well. But I figured in today's video, we would take a look back on the Kaapo Kakko trade, which saw the Rangers get back William Borgen, a solid right-handed defenseman, and 2 draft picks from this past 2025 NHL draft, a 3rd and 6th round pick, which the Rangers did actually keep both those picks and did make the selection. So in today's video, we're going to take kind of a more in-depth kind of look here back at this trade here with Kakko going to the Kraken for Borgen and a 3rd and 6th round pick. We'll take a look at those 2 prospects. We'll take a look at Kaapo Kakko's new contract as well, because he did just recently sign a new deal with the Kraken to remain with them. So we'll take a look at that contract. We'll take a look at Borgen's extension that he got midseason there. We'll talk about those 2 players, and we'll also take a look at the actual 2 prospects that the Rangers did draft with those 2 draft picks they got in that deal. So we're really just going to kind of talk about, as of right now, who up to date is the actual winner of this trade, and really talk about how things kind of look with this trade for right now and going into the future as well. So let's start off here by taking a look at the Kaapo Kakko new kind of contract that was handed out to him a couple days ago from the Kraken, and it ends up being a 3-year deal with a cap hit per season of $4.525 million. So a slight bit above, $4.5 million there cap hit for the next 3 years, which I don't think is bad value at all for Kakko. He was an RFA, of course, but this is kind of the deal I would have expected him to sign, even if he did stay with the Rangers. Something around here I think would have been pretty realistic. 3-year deal at about 4.5 makes a lot of sense there for a player who can, potentially get you 50, 60 points in a full season there. He ended up having 30 points there in just under about 50 games played with the Kraken this past season. So I definitely think Kakko can be a really good kind of middle 6 forward for years to come. I think he can definitely be around that kind of 40 to 60 point kind of mark. He'll probably fluctuate up and down in between those kind of numbers season in, season out, but I think for the most part there, he should be around that kind of 50, 60 point mark, maybe on the lower end 40, but I think around that kind of anywhere from really 40 to 60 point range, I can definitely see Kakko being that type of forward for many years to come. I don't think he's going to get much more than that, but I also don't think he should be much kind of lower than 40 points. That's for sure. So I think Kakko's still got a lot of talent there. He's still going to be a great forward. I don't think he's ever, of course, going to be that true kind of high-end top 6 caliber guy all of us, or most of us, kind of originally thought he could possibly be when he was drafted by the Rangers, of course, but I do think he is still a talented young player, definitely has some more room to grow to get better, and, I do think, like I said, he definitely can be a 50, maybe even 60-point kind of guy for years to come at the NHL level, and that 4.5 or just above that cap hit wise, I don't think it's bad at all. It definitely makes a lot of sense for that kind of a caliber of player who is an RFA. It does kind of make a lot of sense there that he got this type of a deal. And now let's carry on to the New York Rangers side of things here, where we'll talk about the prospects. First off, the 2 guys the Rangers got in this past draft, where those 2 draft picks the Rangers got in this trade. And then after that, we'll take a look at Will Borgen and kind of talk about his contract, how well he did this past season with the Rangers, and how good he can be possibly going forward. And then we'll kind of talk a bit about maybe who won the overall kind of actual trade as well up to date. But taking a look at these 2 prospects, like I said, the Rangers got back in this trade 2 picks, being a 3rd and 6th round pick, both for the 2025 draft, and they used both those picks to select 2 different prospects, of course. With a 3rd rounder, it ended up being a big, tougher, kind of more defense-to-defenseman kind of player, and that is Sean Barnhill, an American-born prospect. And then you've got, with that 6th round pick, it was used on an overage prospect who could have been taken in last year's draft, Samuel Jung, a Czechian-born prospect, currently playing over in the Finnish junior leagues as an overage kind of guy. Didn't do kind of crazy, so I don't love that pick, honestly. I think maybe there's a bit of goal-scoring upside with this player. He is kind of big and I guess maybe somewhat skilled, but I'm not exactly sure what the Rangers see with Samuel Jung in the 6th round pick, but that 3rd round pick is definitely pretty enticing. This is, like I said, a big, kind of tougher-looking, physical, shutdown defenseman that is just a really good kind of sound defensive player who spent this past season playing in the USHL. And, I do think is a pretty talented prospect there. He's not some super kind of high-end prospect, but I think there's definitely, decent upside with this player because he is standing at about 6'5", 6'6" kind of height there. He's got a good kind of overall defensive game. He brings some physicality and toughness. So I feel like at least this guy could potentially be a maybe decent kind of bottom pairing defenseman. We'll have to wait and see kind of how he develops, but he definitely has the right kind of intangibles to potentially become a very kind of valuable player at the NHL level. And we know, if you really kind of follow this past NHL draft, there were an insane amount of, especially defensemen that were taken that are above like 6 foot kind of height there. I mean, it was insane the amount of guys, especially that were taken on the defensive side of things, that were like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", or above even. There was so many of those type of prospects taken in this past draft. So I think adding in a guy like Sean Barnhill is definitely a nice kind of pickup there. It seems like that's kind of a way the NHL is kind of going maybe a little bit there, as of late at least, with the draft. So we'll have to wait and see, but this is definitely someone with, some intangibles and some things you can't teach, like obviously 6'5", 6'6" height there. So having a guy like that join the organization and be, a solid prospect is definitely not a bad thing at all. And maybe we can end up being a really great kind of top 4 caliber, shutdown, really tough and gritty defensive defenseman. But let's get on to Will Borgen and kind of talk about him, because he was obviously the main piece that it was kind of picked up in this trade. And when it originally happened, I'm not going to lie, I made a video talking about it, of course, breaking down the trade, and I didn't love it. I kind of questioned this trade quite a bit. But as things have kind of gone on now, and I've seen Will Borgen play, I've really started to kind of like this deal quite a bit more. And that's not to say that I wouldn't want Kaapo Kakko on this team. I just think the Rangers, we're in a spot where they've got guys like Gabe Perreault, Brendan Hoffman, Brett Berard. They're going to have guys like Adam Sikora, Dylan Rubrek, Noah Laba, a bunch of these forward prospects, especially more so on the wing side, but a bunch of forward prospects that are about NHL ready, or in the case of guys like Hoffman, Perreault, and Berard, are pretty much there, right? So I think shipping off a guy like Kakko, who is kind of a middle six guy, I don't think at this point he has the upside to be a top line level kind of forward. I think it did make a lot of sense, and definitely does, even as of right now, to have made that trade there to get a top 4 caliber guy. I think maybe he is a lower end kind of second pairing guy, but Will Borgen is, I think, capable of being a maybe kind of number 4 caliber guy. I don't think he's ever going to be a true kind of high-end top 4 defenseman, but he can definitely be a number 4 caliber defenseman, around there at least. So I think picking him up and signing him to the deal that he got was quite nice. And that is also the big thing with this kind of pickup and trade here as well, and kind of why I do think the Rangers really did a pretty good job. And I honestly am going to say I think both sides have done a pretty good job here and kind of won this deal. The Kraken have lots of picks and prospects. They didn't need this 3rd and 6th round pick, so shipping them off, and Borgen, who was at the time an expiring player, and getting back guy like Kakko there was not a bad move at all for them, who they got a kind of younger mid-20s, solid defensive winger there who can put up maybe 40 to 60 point range, something around there. So they got a good winger there, a kind of second line caliber guy, a middle 6 forward there in Kakko. And then we got back a couple nice prospects there, which I think is nice because we know this team has shipped off so many picks and prospects and assets over the years. So adding in a couple more guys there was not a bad thing at all. And then you also get back a player who is now locked up on I would say, a pretty kind of team-friendly deal. When you really kind of take a look at the deals that were handed out this past free agency that's kind of going on right now, and you take a look at a player like Cody Ceci, who ended up signing a 4-year deal with like a $4.5 million cap hit, getting Will Borgen on a 5-year deal with a $4.1 million cap hit, I think is pretty incredible there, right? I think we got a better player for now and also a better player longer term on a cheaper deal with an extra year on top of that, which I don't think is a bad thing. This is not a player in Will Borgen who is already into his kind of mid or late 30s there, right? This is a player who is still in his 20s there, who isn't even 30 yet, and at the end of this deal, he's going to be about 33 years old. So I think this is the perfect kind of range of deal there, where you're getting him until maybe where it really kind of starts to potentially start to kind of drop off a bit there in his play. And that's why this deal could really be perfect. And with the cap going up as much as it is going to be and has already kind of done, a $4.1 million cap hit for a defenseman that is capable of being a second pairing kind of right-handed guy is not a bad deal at all by any means. So really and truly, I think both of these teams here, the Kraken and the Rangers, kind of, you could say, won. But if I really had to pick the ultimate winner, I might kind of lean more towards the Rangers side of things there, just with the fact that, we do have a couple prospects there on top of getting a guy like Borgen with the upside that maybe Sean Barnhill can potentially be a really solid NHL shutdown defenseman one day, right? Or maybe Samuel Jung becomes a player or some one day, right? So I think overall, it's pretty much kind of an even trade. Like, I think both teams did good in this deal, but if I had to give an ultimate kind of winner here, I had to decide, I would probably keep my bias aside. I really do feel like the Rangers kind of came out on top here, but both teams, like I said, really did a great job in this deal. The Rangers got what they needed there. Another good defenseman who can help just kind of solidify this team defensively, because we had some major issues last season. So I think he was a great pickup there. The contract he got makes it even better. And then you also consider we got a couple nice prospects there, especially with Sean Barnhill, who I really like. I mean, 6'6" size thereabouts, so good defensive game, shutdown player. Good kind of toughness and edge to his game there. So I think overall that's a nice pickup. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post every single day a video about the New York Rangers. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on this. First off, Kaapo Kakko, kind of new deal there that he got, it being a 3-year deal with a cap at about $4.525 million. What are your thoughts on this trade as a whole there? And also, what are your thoughts on those two prospects? Sean Barnhill, Samuel Jung, do you like those prospects? Do you dislike them? Let me know your thoughts on this trade as a whole. Who do you think won? Who do you think lost? I'll catch you next one. And let's go Rangers.